So neurotube defects are going to be very common on examinations, and they're also going to be one of those things that will cause very high distress and in patients and our mothers or the family or whoever has had a child with this. So in this video, I'm going to look at the embryology of neurotube defects, where they come from, what could be done to prevent them, what brings them about, the risk factors that have been identified. We shall look at the different types and try to classify them to the classes of open and closed. And then we shall look at the diagnosis eventually, especially the prenatal diagnosis before the child has come out, how we screen. And then we shall look at the management and eventually the prevention. So this is Made One Pager. Welcome, and let's start writing. So we're going to begin with the embryology, and this begins with understanding what happens. Now, the neurotube or the central nervous system is going to start developing very, very, very early. And by around the 18, we are having what we call the primary neurulation. Note that this is going to be about 2 weeks after conception, 2 to 3 weeks after conception, and the woman has not even reached the point of seeing her second period. So it is very important to note these things because errors that give rise to neurotube defects are going to occur within that period, even before the woman realizes that she's pregnant. And when you look at the risk factors, one of them is folate deficiency. If not supplement, if the woman is not having enough folate, by the time you realize that they are pregnant, to supplement them, you may already have the defects developed. So what happens is that primary neurulation is going to be this formation of fast folds, the folds that are going to be making a spinal cord, as well as where the brain is going to develop them, the neural groove. So the notochord induces an ectoderm neural plate. So we're seeing here, we're having a neural plate that has formed, the one in purple, and the neural plate is going to form neural folds. So we start forming the neural folds, and the neural folds give us the neural groove, and the neural groove that is eventually what will give us the neural, what we call the neural tube. And the neural tube is going to be formed when these folds come and they start to fuse. So the fusion is going to begin around the mid-cervical region. Think around the neck, or what will become the baby. So around the neck there, the mid-cervical region, is where fusion is going to begin, and it's going to be like a zip. We are going to start closing this tube, coming from the cervical region, going down and going up. And then we shall have two poles. We shall have the cranial and the caudal poles. So the cranial neural pore, or what causes, or the skull, the one that causes on the skull, the cranial neural pore is going to close by day 25, and the caudal neural pore, which is downwards, where the spinal cord is going to end, is going to close by day 27, a difference of about 2 days. Then after we have closed that, we are going to go to what we call the secondary neurulation, or the canalization. Now when you're having the canalization, forming that canal inside. So what happens is that during primary neurulation, if we don't have this zipping up, if we don't have any closure, then we are going to expose the we are going to expose this central nervous system tissue to the amniotic fluid, and that is how we get the open neurotube defects, things like the anencephaly, and we're going to look at that in details. Then secondary neurulation, or the canalization, is going to form the sacral or the coccygeal cord. So the sacral and coccygeal are not going to come from primary neurulation, they're going to form after, and they are going to arise on the poorly differentiated mass that is at the end, which is the medial eminence. And it is not by folding. Basically, we are not having any foldings anymore. What we are having is proliferation of these, so they're going to be dividing, and they produce what we call the finum terminale and the conus medullaris. Now, conus medullaris is that end point of a spinal cord, so we close it off, forming that conus medullaris down. We are going to close off that tube, and then the finum terminale is now going to be a continuous fibrous band that is going to move from the end of the cord and anchor it to the vertebra. So this filament now prevents the cord from moving about to the vertebral column. It's like a string stabilizing the cord inside there. So what happens is that after this has formed, then we have the cord, and by week 8 the cord is going to expand the whole length of the vertebral column. So the whole vertebral column, the bone, the backbone, is going to be covered by the cord by week 8. But then we shall have the growth of the bone and the cord differ. So we'll find that the bones are going to grow, the backbone is going to grow faster than the cord, and therefore the cord will be shorter than the vertebra. That's why the cord in adults is going to end around L2, in young children around L3, L4 there. So when you look at the pathophysiology, is that when you have primary neurulation failure, we won't have open neural defects. That means the folding and the zipping fail, and that is going to give you the anencephaly and the myelomeningocele. Then when you have secondary neurulation failure, you're going to have the closed neural tube defects. This is because we already finished folding very well, but as we close off, as we seal off this thing, now we have, as we seal off the cord, that is where we have now issues. So we shall have things like a myelomeningocele and the occult dystrophism, like the Spina Bifida occult. We shall look at those. Let's look at the risk factors. So the risk factor number 1 that is implicated, and the most modifiable risk factor, is the folate deficiency. This is what we most of the time we can't do anything about, because folate is required in DNA synthesis, and during this formation of the neural tissue, there's a lot of proliferation that's taking place. So you need folate there. When you have a folate deficiency, some errors are going to occur, and that is going to make it make the development of those neural tube defects possible. Then you have the MTHFR mutation, and this one is going to interfere with the metabolism of folate. If there is a prior pregnancy that has affected, we have a chance of recurring, because whatever could have caused the mutation in the first place, that could have caused the neural tube defect, could still be there. If we have pregestational diabetes, it's also a risk. And then valproate and carbamazepine drugs are also a common cause of this, because they are folate antagonists, and these ones are mostly anti-seizure drugs. And then obesity and hypothermia are also independent risk factors. So when you look at the types of neural defects, we have the anencephaly. Anencephaly is going to be because when we have rostroneural failure, and when you have rostroneural failure, it means as the brain was zipping up, as the cord was, the neural tube was zipping up, it reached somewhere up here and did not close. And when it doesn't close, the brain is exposed to the cerebrospinal fluid. And cerebrospinal fluid is kind of corrosive, and it is going to lead to the hemispheres, and the cerebral hemispheres and the calvarium not form, because again, the skull cannot form over an open space, and that is going. So most of the time, it's going to be lethal and not compatible with life. And when during the antenatal period, when you do the alpha fetoprotein of the mother and the acetylcholinesterase are going to be high. So these two are going to be markers of an open neural tube defect. Then we have the spina bifida now. Spina bifida is going to come from we have the occulta. The occulta is going to be a vertebral defect. Now here we have the formation of the vertebral bones. Now one of the vertebral bones, or we have a defect or opening between the vertebral bones, and this is going to be something that allows kind of some tissue of the meninges to pass through. So when it is occulta, we don't have anything herniating. We just have the abnormality. There is no bone, but we have an abnormality like skin tuft or dimple. And most of the time, the alpha fetoprotein is going to be normal, because there's no exposure of this CNS tissue to the CSF. Then meningocele is going to be when there is an opening in the vertebra as well as into the neural tube. Now, non-neural tissue is going to be exposed to the thing, but the meninges are going to be bulging through that hole. And when the meninges bulge, they are going to contain CSF because we know uh, the CSF is in the subarachnoid space. So as the meninges go out, the CSF is going to cause a bulging that forms a kind of cyst, giving it this name serum, meningocele. Then myelomeningocele is when we have the neural tissue now being exposed to the CSF and to the amniotic fluid, and the meninges and the spinal cord are going to herniate, and it is the most severe. And most of the time, it's going to occur in the lumbosacral area, in that last point of where the lumbar meets the sacrum, and most of the time it's going to be associated with the KRE2 hydrocephalus, and this is because as the spinal cord herniates, it's going to pull downwards. I remember the spinal cord is a continuation of the brain, and it pulls the brain. The brain is going to herniate into the foramen magnum, and when we have the cerebellar tonsils passing through the foramen magnum, that is how we have a KRE malformation. And the complications are going to include paraplegia, because imagine you are compressing the things that are passing through the brain staying there, like the pyramidal tracks and everything. We are sending, basically you're compressing a lot of neurons there. Then you can have a neurogenic bladder due to disruption of L2S3 nerves. We can have a covered cord syndrome coming, even as a repercussion of the surgeries that correct this myelomeningocele. And tethered cord is when you have this cord that is being held tightly that it cannot move. You know, the film terminal holds it in place, but it loses its laxity now. Tethered cord doesn't. Clubfoot is another deformity that is associated with this, and sometimes because of exposure of this tissue, it is handled with gloves, and the mucous membranes are exposed to latex at an early age, and this could lead to formation of a latex allergy in these children. Then the last one is the encephalocele. Encephalocele is going to be due to failure of cranial closure. Now, if this one has nothing to do with the neurotube is okay, but the cranium kind of fails to close, and because there's no exposure of the neural tissue to the amniotic fluid, we are going to have the brain intact. But because the cranium is leaving a space, the brain is going to herniate through that space and at the skull. And the most common location is of the occiput. Sometimes it can be on the nose, it can be anywhere, but most of the times it's on the occiput. So diagnosis, when you see the maternal serum alpha fetoprotein high at 15 to 20 Woods, it is open neurotube defects only. When the alpha fetoprotein is normal, most of the time it is approached. It may not be fair. Then when you find that you have alpha fetoprotein and acetylcholinesterase both increase, this confirms really that there is neurotissue exposure. When you do the ultrasound, you can see a lemon sign for frontal bossing and a banana sign that shows cerebellar compression in myelomeningocele. Then fetal MRI, this is the best form for characterization. The MRI will give you the whole picture. So the management, we have the prenatal, you want to consider the mother, you want to consider termination, especially if there are lethal defects like anencephaly, you may consider termination of this pregnancy. Then sometimes we do the in vitro repair where we do surgery, or surgery is done on the spinal cord, especially for the myelomeningocele, and this has shown it's actually now the standard of care in developed countries. It has shown reduced requirement for things like shunts afterwards and reduces on the complications that come about. Then postnatally, when the child is born, you want to give a sterile saline dressing, put a sterile saline dressing, you want to position the child in prone position and prevent pressure on that neurotube defect. Broad spectrum antibiotics, because the meninges are exposed or new tissues exposed, there's a high risk of meningitis, and RNA surgical closure within 24 to 48 hours if possible. Then hydrocephalus, you may need to put a ventriculoperitoneal shunt and or endoscopic third grade ventriculostomy in selected cases where it works. Then long-term multidisciplinary interventions are going to be involved, joint neurosurgeon, neurology, orthopedics, physiotherapy, as well as social support. Now, I made a video about hydrocephalus. If you really want to check it out, I cover most of it in details. I talk about the chance, where it comes from. Please do check out that. Then prevention, 400 micrograms of folic acid for all women of childbearing age has to be started before conception, because you have seen that by the time someone realizes they're pregnant, neurulation has already taken place. So you want to start this before conceptions. In high-risk patients that have had prior neurotype defects, trying to give about 4 to 5 milligrams per day this of folate to supplement them. Then folate has a direct role in neurotype closure. Food fortification has reduced the foodware incidence, where folate is now added in food. Then the critical window is the first 4 weeks of pregnancy, even before the pregnancy is recognized. Therefore, supplementation must be pre-conceptional before neurulation begins. This is made one picture, and that was neurotype defects. Let's meet in the next video. Please do check out the channel, check out other videos. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe and share this video with anyone you think needs to know about neurotype defects. Thank you very much.